Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, despite Western intelligence suggesting otherwise, Russia insists it has no plans to attack Ukraine. With the world's attention squarely focused on the Ukraine border, the Kremlin must now decide if it will choose war over diplomacy. A potential conflict will have far-reaching humanitarian, geopolitical and socio-economic consequences. Olga Lautman, a senior fellow at the Center for European Policy Analysis based in Washington, D.C., will be joining me for her assessment. And I'll be speaking with Marius Reich, the general manager of Africa at the cryptocurrency exchange platform Luno, who'll be joining me from Johannesburg to share some insights on how digital currencies are maturing more than a year after the sector was outlawed in Nigeria. But first, as always, let's start the show with news from here in the UK, where the cost of living crisis continues to grow. Data released by the Office for National Statistics earlier in the week revealed that UK inflation accelerated for a fourth straight month in January to 5.5%, a new 30-year high driven by clothing and footwear. Pressure is now being piled on the Bank of England to raise interest rates by at least 50 basis points when they gather next month. Elsewhere, embattled Prime Minister Boris Johnson was forced to cut short a UK-wide tour promoting his levelling up agenda to focus on the brewing tensions in Europe. The government's flagship policy to close the gap between the North and the South has been heavily criticised, as there are doubts over how much new money will be committed to the proposed new schemes. Earlier, I spoke with our business correspondent Simon Pusey for some analysis. Simon, so the Prime Minister was hoping that this recess would allow him to focus on other domestic issues like the levelling up agenda, but his UK-wide tour was cut short because of the drumbeats of war. Did he manage to get anything done?
Yeah, so as you said there, he was trying to brand this tour of the UK as a levelling up tour, but his opponents, especially in Scotland, were calling it his farewell tour, obviously because of the issues he's been having in Parliament here in London. It was Valentine's Day when he kicked off the tour on Monday the 14th, and he was trying to show the love to the Scottish first, went up to Edinburgh and Fife, and you may remember that Douglas Ross called for him to resign, as did other Scottish MPs, so I think it was kind of him trying to win them back as much as anything. Meet them and sort of try and smooth that over. He went to Edinburgh and Fife with a pledge to boost trade and business by creating two, what he's calling green free ports north of the border. So free ports are basically tax-free zones around docks, airways or railway hubs designed to sort of boost economic growth. He was also talking about Scottish independence, saying that's never going to happen. Obviously, that's a big thing for the SNP. That's what they're campaigning for. But for Scottish Conservatives and for Conservatives around the UK, always very keen to keep Scotland as part of the Union, so that will have strung a chord with them. He actually had to go back to London on Monday, as you said, because of Ukraine, but not before he went to Cumbria in the north of England. He went to an oncology centre to talk about tackling COVID backlogs in the northwest of England. And as you said, I think a lot of opposition MPs are saying, well, he's trying to change the conversation here because obviously he's been under the cosh for weeks and months now. And he's obviously trying to shift attention away from that, which, of course, you'd understand. And he's trying to sort of avoid a leadership challenge by talking about other things. Obviously, with Ukraine so big in the news, he doesn't really need to do that because everyone's worried about the situation between Russia and Ukraine. But yeah, he was talking about levelling up, talking about getting over COVID, talking about Scottish independence and these new green port zones. But I think the problem he's got is obviously this controversy is not going to stop as much as he does try to do this. But, the news is an odd thing. If anything does happen in Ukraine, suddenly that loses a lot of significance and all eyes are sort of turned away from that. I think we didn't actually know where he was going to go on this tour if he hadn't had to go back and host that Cobra meeting on Ukraine. But Wales is probably another place he would have gone. That's another place that they took a lot of seats from Labour last time, that is usually a Labour heartland, and I think they're probably going to announce another green free port there as well. But yeah, he is looking like he's going to go to Europe. We again don't know where he's going in Europe at the moment, but it's looking like the Nordic and Baltic countries, again probably to how much good this will actually do the Ukraine crisis is probably little to nothing. But he needs to show that he's taking leadership, that he's a statesman, that he can talk to foreign leaders, and he can look powerful and mighty. And so that's probably part of the agenda as well. All prime ministers probably would do this, but as we've seen with Liz Truss speaking to her Russian counterpart, it didn't really go well. So I don't know how much sort of position Britain has on the global stage in this context. But yeah, later this week he's going to go to Europe, to several countries in Europe. And I think it really depends on what's going to happen in Ukraine. If it does kick off there, I think in a sort of weird, sick, twisted way, that will help Boris Johnson in terms of shifting attention away as much as he's tried to do with this levelling up tour of Europe.
Thank you, Simon. Let's change gears now and focus on the story that has gripped geopolitics for the past month, an all-out war between Russia and NATO allies. Russia has stationed an estimated 130,000 troops along its border with Ukraine this winter, increasing suspicion that an invasion is imminent. In the most recent developments, Russia claims to have de-escalated the situation. However, Western powers suggest the latest intelligence indicates that a significant presence is still visible. The US, the EU and the UK continue to threaten Russian President Vladimir Putin with tough economic sanctions should he invade Ukraine. According to reports, more than 14,000 people have died in fighting between the two nations that goes back almost a decade. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by Olga Lautman, a senior fellow at the Centre for European Policy Analysis based in Washington, D.C. Olga Lautman, it's a pleasure to have you here on Channel's Business Global. I've got to tell you, there are some mixed signals, not just from the border of Russia and Ukraine, but also from the media. I think for our viewers in Africa, they're used to skewed reporting, and there are some confusions about what exactly is going on. Earlier in the week, it seemed as if Putin had de-escalated the situation. He suggests that troops are being pulled back. And then all of a sudden, Jens Stoltenberg, Biden, Boris Johnson are saying that simply isn't the case and that intelligence shows otherwise. What's your assessment on what exactly is taking place on the ground?
Well, Boris Johnson and U.S. are absolutely correct. While Putin, came out this week that now he wants to go back to the negotiating table and, that he's going to, in good faith, start pulling troops back, that is absolutely not the case. And the problem with media is that some in media are so quick to jump to report the headline first. I woke up yesterday and I'm like, breaking news, Russian troops moving away from the border. They're being pulled back. They are pulling back units. First of all, there's still a huge buildup on the border. There continues to be more troops pouring in. They're moving into position along Ukraine's border, both on the Belarusian side and on the Russian side. So it is irrelevant that they decided to move some units away, that are not in the direct line of conflict should Russia choose to further invade. And also, two of the units were moved closer to Ukraine's border. So, it is complete misinformation. There has been nothing, and it's not even from intelligence. You can actually look at open source information and see, the information for yourself. We don't have to rely on intelligence. Everything is out in the open as far as all the military movements and the positions.
Absolutely. Of course, that's one of the consequences of the drumbeat of war. There are always misinterpretations. However, that day, Wednesday, came and went, and there doesn't appear to be a single shot fired. I'm just quoting Russia there. Let me talk to you about Germany. I don't know if you've seen any of the headlines, but gas has been a huge issue, the price of gas. Not just on the mainland Europe, also in Britain, we're seeing skyrocketing energy bills. There were some suggestions that perhaps the new Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, during his visit to Russia, was trying to appease Putin because of the strong dependence upon Russian gas by Germany. Nord Stream 2, Biden has put it quite definitively that, that should be axed and scrapped. But Scholz is moving away from that definitive rebuttal of the pipeline. Do you think perhaps Germany could have been compromised?
Absolutely. And as far as with Chancellor Schultz, it's amazing because he can't even, standing next to Biden, he couldn't even say that, yes, definitively this pipeline will be finished if Russia further invades Ukraine. I mean, he said, yes, we're in agreement with United States, but, he couldn't for himself say. But look, going back to the bigger picture, Russia uses this tactic. It's a very well-known tactic where they provide very favorable energy deals in order to create a reliance by the host country. And they do this with politicians, and a lot of people, make very good money dealing with Russia, as we see with Schroeder. And now he's sitting, or will be sitting on the board of Gazprom. And they do this twofold. There are two operations going. One, in order to cause a rift between allies. And you see this happening with Eastern and Central Europe and Western Europe, because Western Europe is reliant. They have their own interests at stake. And the second thing is that they cannot respond properly to an aggression when Russia, has one of their many aggressions or poisonings or whatnot, because they're holden by Russian gas. And we saw a good taste of it even with Belarus over the fall winter. As Belarus was weaponizing migrants onto the border, Russia at the same time was weaponizing energy. And they cut the flow of energy into Germany at actually 3 points. They reversed the flow of gas from Germany back towards Poland. And you saw them give a taste to Germany of what will happen, what the prices will be if Russia chooses to retaliate in this way. And that is why Europe should know for a long time that you cannot have Russia as a reliable trading partner if you don't have any other options, because then you are held hostage to Russia and you cannot respond in this simple situation where Russia, who is acting very aggressively, wants to just enter a sovereign country just because.
Absolutely. You've mentioned some really good points there. I think some of our viewers may point out that the US and the UK also use those strategic allies abroad stationed anytime they're in trouble. I've got to ask you, because I think this seems to have been lost in some of the debate that's been taking place over the past couple of weeks. I think the Kremlin clearly have a choice. They can choose war, they can choose diplomacy. What if they choose war? What are the consequences of that?
I mean, the consequences, we saw the alerts and the unusual military movements in Transnistria and Moldova. We now have Putin, who basically soft annexed Belarus and turned it into a bigger military ground and added military forces to his existing forces. Plus, now he has Belarus where he can conduct hybrid warfare, and we see cyber attacks coming out of Belarus. They are right on Poland and Lithuania's border. So now you have Russia essentially right on Poland and Lithuania's border. You have Russia and Belarus, in discussions of moving nuclear weapons into Belarus for them to host. This can easily go outside of Ukraine and turn into a European war, which we have not seen since, World War II.
Absolutely. That's what Biden was saying earlier today. Again, I think balance is needed, Olga, as you would understand, given your position. But Putin has been saying, this is what Putin says, that he's concerned that the increasing integration of Eastern European countries into NATO could lead to an alliance somehow turning against Russia. Surely he is also able to protect his borders.
Well, okay, so this talking point goes back to Soviet days. This is how they ran the country. They used to have, this external enemy that was ready to send a nuclear weapon at any moment. And I mean, this is what they do.
Olga Lautman, some really fascinating insights from you there, the Senior Fellow at the Centre for European Policy Analysis in Washington. Thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you.
Coming up on Channel's Business Global. Marius Reich, the General Manager of Africa at the cryptocurrency exchange platform Luno, will be joining me to share some insights on how digital currencies are maturing more than a year after the sector was outlawed in Nigeria. See you after the break. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. In a few minutes, I'll be speaking with Marius Reich, the General Manager at Africa for Luno. But before then, here's some company news for you. Sports retailers JD Sports and Foot Asylum have been fined almost £5 million by the UK's competition regulator for breaching rules related to their blocked merger. Amid a probe of the proposed £90 million deal, the two firms are accused of exchanging commercially sensitive information which they failed to report to the watchdog. The Competition and Markets Authority said these actions had the potential to affect competition in the market and lead to anti-competitive behaviour. The deal has since collapsed. Data released by China's National Bureau of Statistics revealed that the country's official consumer price index came in at 0.9% in January, down from a rise of 1.5% in December. The price of pork, a staple meat on Chinese plates, plunged by 41.6% compared with a year earlier, which contributed heavily to the fall in food prices. The subdued inflation data gives the country's central bank more leeway to ease monetary policy as Beijing strives to revive an economy battered by a property downturn and ongoing high COVID-19 infection rates. NatWest has closed 32 branches in the UK this year as customers switch to using online services. Over 4,500 high street bank branches have been closed within the past 7 years, raising fears that less tech-savvy customers could struggle to manage their money. NatWest said most staff will be redeployed to suitable roles within the branch network. The Dutch economy grew 0.9% in the fourth quarter of 2021, despite a surge in coronavirus infections that led to the closing of bars, restaurants and many non-essential stores. The Netherlands is the Eurozone's fifth largest economy, and GDP recovered 4.8% last year, following an unprecedented decline of 3.8% in 2020. Last week, the government said it intends to remove most coronavirus restrictions by the end of the month. Shares in the home rental agency Airbnb rallied earlier this week after bosses reported strong fourth quarter trade results. The San Francisco-based firm has become a surprising beneficiary of the embattled travel industry as travelers left their city dwellings for suburban retreats while they worked away from the office. For the 3 months to the end of December, revenue grew 78% year-on-year to $1.53 billion. Airbnb has a market capitalization of $114.4 billion and currently has 5.6 million active listings in 100,000 cities across the world. The Singapore bank, DBS, reported a strong net profit for the 3 months to the end of December at just over $1 billion. During the full year, profit for Southeast Asia's largest lender rose 44% to a record $6.8 billion. Bosses cite a 9% growth in loans, the highest in 7 years, alongside a surge in wealth management and transaction banking service fees, which offset the impact of lower interest rates. The boom follows a weak pandemic-hit year when profit tumbled to a 3-year low in the fourth quarter. To our final story now. Despite the year-long ban of cryptocurrency use in Nigeria, the country remains one of the world leaders when it comes to crypto adoption. Nigeria doesn't have a law that governs cryptocurrency yet, and concerns about regulating the booming sector are not limited to the continent. The risks of trading and hacking are yet to deter fans, though, who insist that the tech is secure. Recently, Goldman Sachs forecast that Bitcoin will soon compete with gold as a haven for long-term investment. Well, for more on this, I'm now being joined by Marius Reich, the General Manager of Africa for Luno. Luno is one of the leading global crypto exchanges in the world, with more than 3 million users based in Nigeria. Marius joins me from Johannesburg. Marius Reich, it's a pleasure to have you on Channel's Business Global. Now, these regulations concerning cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, they're not unique to Nigeria. Over the past 18 or so months, I've spoken to several people about the Financial Conduct Authority here in the UK. They've raised the alarm, as well as other institutions across the world. Do you think that these concerns are being taken aboard? Is the cryptocurrency market maturing?
Hello, Juliana. Yes, I think there are two certainties in technology, and that is innovation and regulation. All disruptive technologies such as cryptocurrency and counter regulation on the path to mass adoption over time. And the same is true for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. It's a new technology. It will face certain issues such as scaling issues. There will be consumer protection issues around scams. But I think over the past 5 years or so, the technology has improved significantly. Just last week, the US law enforcement agency seized more than $3 billion worth of cryptocurrency from previous scams. And I think that is a testament to the fact that the cryptocurrency industry isn't the Wild West that most people want to believe it is. And that we now have the technology to really monitor transactions and to ensure that cryptocurrency and the benefits of using cryptocurrency can be used by honest people. So I do think a lot of these concerns raised are being addressed in a global coordinated manner. We've seen regulations being introduced in markets such as Malaysia, where Luno is a regulated cryptocurrency asset exchange, working with the Malaysian regulators there, and similarly in other markets as well. So there's a clear trend globally to regulate, and we think that's a good thing.
Absolutely. We know that it's been just over a year now since the Central Bank of Nigeria put out that blanket ban. I know you've got about 3 million users in Nigeria. Do you think it's in the best interest of the government or the financial institutions to overturn this ban? People are still clearly finding ways to trade crypto. Have you had any discussions with them?
I think we have to acknowledge the central banks are in a difficult position. They have to manage this balancing act. At the one side, they have to protect consumers. On the other side, they need to ensure that they don't stifle innovation and that they can still be seen as a sort of innovative market for companies to come and establish themselves. And I think we're seeing the same in Nigeria and across other African markets. The challenge with a blanket ban ultimately is that you push the market underground, and the impact of that is zero visibility on certain important things such as transaction volumes, the number of residents engaging in cryptocurrency, new use cases in the market. So there's lots of visibility that goes out of the window whenever a blanket ban is introduced, because regulators lose that touch point with the market players such as Luno. So it makes the market less transparent. Luno is convinced that regulation is the best way forward to protect consumers, but also to ensure that Nigerians and Nigeria remains as one of the major innovation hubs in Africa and globally. So we do think that ultimately we will see regulation, and Luno is open to working with the Central Bank of Nigeria to try and reach a middle point where we can protect consumers, but at the same time, we can also grow the industry and grow the market responsibly.
Absolutely. There's no pushing crypto underneath the rug. Before I let you go, Marius, I've got to ask you about your expansion. Luno doing exceptionally well, and not just on the continent. You've recently decided to enter the US market. I can imagine that's pretty competitive. What piqued your interest there?
Yeah, we're very happy. We're about to sign up 10 million customers globally, so we're very happy with the growth. Luno's mission is to upgrade the world to a better financial system. We want to expose more people globally, and our objective is to expose 1 billion people to crypto by 2030. And the US, is integral to that objective, being a very big market, 300 million people. And it's one of the more sophisticated markets globally when it comes to cryptocurrency, things like regulation, things like innovation, new use cases being developed, institutional interest as well. So we think that we're still very early on. We think that most people still don't understand cryptocurrency. And we think that there's still a very, very big opportunity over the next 5 to 10 years to take crypto to people globally, and to enable people a safe and easy way to dip their toes into crypto, really. So the US is a big opportunity for us, and it's a market that we will focus on over the course of this year as well.
Absolutely. The risks are there, but the fans just keep on trading, don't they? Marius Reich, General Manager for Africa at Luno, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Thank you. Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.